So Chase Burns is the Reds' number one prospect, and he was also their top draft pick last draft, obviously. But when you look at how big of a deal it was that the Reds were able to get a talent like this, and the success that they've had in the draft, especially over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, they've been very effective in not just trading for prospects over the years, but also drafting and developing. That's been one of the biggest key turnarounds for the Reds. When you look at the fact that every time they've called a rookie up and the immediate impact that they've made, I think back to the early 2010s when they, after they kind of had made their playoff push and they moved on from Dusty Baker and they started moving on from the Brandon Phillips and the Todd Fraziers of the world. That rebuild was not very effective. They did not have a very good farm system. They didn't, once they called up the Bruces and the Fraziers and all those guys, they didn't have a big, backload of talent coming in to replace them to keep that farm system fresh. And that's what kind of killed him in that rebuild initially in the mid 2010s. Now you look at the talent that they've drafted and developed, and that's something that the Reds really kind of shifted their point of emphasis on. When it came to their farm system over the years, they really have put an emphasis on that side of things. And we can tell, you look at Rhett Lowder being called up last year, the immediate impact he made. 2 years ago with the Ellie De La Cruz and the Matt McClain and the Spencer Steer, and all the guys that they called up during that time frame and the immediate impact they've made. There hasn't been too many guys that they've called up, and it's just been an utter failure at this point. Not that you're going to have 100%, success rate, but their success rate has been pretty damn good to the point to where once they've called these guys up, we went from talking about this team 2 years ago being 100-plus loss season and being years away from contending to 2 years later having arguably the best manager in baseball, a Cy Young caliber pitcher in Hunter Greene, a generational talent in Ellie De La Cruz, an all-star second baseman in Matt McClain. I mean, the list goes on and on. They've done such a good job at drafting and developing talent over the years, as well as also acquiring some top prospects through some of the trades that they've made. We can rip the Reds for an office all we want, and a lot of it is warranted, especially with that ownership group that almost challenged the fan base a few years ago who had kind of gotten fed up. But they've done a pretty good job as far as developing to get this team to the points where we have expectations. So now I look at a guy like Chase Burns, who coming up later on today will make his spring training debut for the Cincinnati Reds. And although I don't know how much stock you want to put into a debut in spring training, it is just exciting to see another young piece that the Reds have added to their system in less than a calendar year and see what he's made of. Nothing will be made or broken off of what he does later on this afternoon, but I'm excited to see another young piece in this system, debut for the Reds, although it's only spring training. How are we feeling about Chase Burns? And again, just to continue on the pattern of just successful drafting and developments of these pitchers and young talents coming through the system.
I think the last couple of years is the worst thing that could possibly happen to Chase Burns.
Yeah.
The fact that Ellie De La Cruz came up and was amazing, and McClain was amazing. And I think his only saving grace is maybe what we saw from Noelvi last year, which taught some Reds fans that prospects aren't sure things. So I don't know. I think the hope is obviously very high. He was a highly touted prospect out of Wake Forest. Unbelievable year. His last year, 17.2 K per nine. Just unbelievable statistics at Wake Forest. And you take him with the second overall pick in the draft for a reason, because you think he can be an ace caliber pitcher. And when you're a team that hasn't had a ton to cheer for a fan base over the last however many years, when you get someone like that early in the draft, you're going to be excited about it. And Reds fans want to see him. And the fact that we haven't had to wait that long to see a lot of the best pitching stars out of the draft in the last couple of years, Rhett Lowder, though forced to because of the situation the Reds were in, did debut the first season after his draft. Paul Skeens, obviously, with the incredible year he had just a few months after being drafted. I think it's kind of warped the mind of a lot of people when it comes to these top prospects, just because over the last couple of years we've seen it quicker than ever. But if we don't see Chase Burns this year, I don't think that's a bad thing. I also don't think it means Chase Burns isn't having a great year. I think the Reds, if they're healthy and the pitching that we have on the team performs to the level we think the pitching on the team can perform to, Chase Burns doesn't sniff the major leagues, and he could be incredible. And that's a great problem to have. So I don't think there's some deadline where I'll freak out about Chase Burns making a debut. I'm going to keep an eye on him in the minors. It's certainly fun to watch these guys progress. But if we don't see him this year, I'm not pressing the panic button or anything along those lines.
No, I'm not concerned. And Jacob's right. The pressure for him to come up is going to be higher than ever because at least in my mind, I think we've got a 4-year window here, a 3 to 4 year window, depending if Terry wants back or the team wants Terry back in that fourth option, or if Ellie wants back. And especially now with the looming, CBA stuff and will they be on strike, you want to see these guys as quickly as you can because you think right now is the time where you strike, right? It just usually doesn't work the way it did with the Reds. It doesn't work when Matt McClain and Ellie and everybody comes up and they're all good. It takes time, like Jacob just said. So that's what I'm looking for, And today when he gets out there, I want to see the triple digis.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. It would be a really, really, really cool thing. To have two pitchers, and hopefully maybe one day it's Hunter and him 1-2. Both of them throwing 102, 103 as starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. That's a really cool thing to have. And I'm hoping that's the case. Now, in terms of what could Chase do this year, I'm still not opposed to it if he pitches well during the minor league season. If he works his way up towards the back half, and if he's that good, and maybe you see some struggle out of old Alexis Diaz,
that'd be awesome.
Maybe there's a chance you see triple digis.
That'd be awesome.
Coming out for our closer. That would be really, really cool. And I'm cheering for that. I'm hoping for that. I know we want to see him as a starting pitcher. That's why you draft him as high as we did. I just think that there could be another use for him, at least to, ramp up that arm a little bit, right? Get it used to major league caliber throwing. And I think that would be really, really cool. Do I expect that to happen? Not really. But I will say this, given the fact that there are so many injuries, and, we never expected in a million years Rhett Lowder to show up at the end of last season. He was here. I'm not writing out the fact that we won't see him this year. I think there's always an opportunity. There's always a chance for guys to show up at some point during an 162 Major League Baseball season. Now, it would be wild. It would be pretty crazy. But I think I'm going to leave that door open for myself. I'm going to give myself a little bit of hope that he might pitch so good in the minors that he makes an appearance late in the season. Maybe in the bullpen, maybe as a starter, I don't know. I'm just really excited. And it's a good place to be as a Reds fan to have so much exciting given the uncertainty, the lack of wins over the past several decades, right? So you have all this talent, it's ready to come up. You're just it's a ticking time bomb, right? You're just waiting for it all to culminate at the right time, and you have an explosive, fun World Series contending Reds season. And I do think that's in the cards over these next 3.5 years. I think there's going to be a chance where the Reds are fighting for a pennant, and that would be really, really cool for me.
Where do we put the 22-year-old future ace because he's having such a good rookie year in the minors? Would be an awesome problem to have.
Great problem.
Whether it's the bullpen or, a fifth starter or whatever we want to do, I think that would be a phenomenal place to be at the end of this year. So certainly wouldn't turn my nose up at that by any means. If we get to see Chase Burns this year, I think that's more of a wow than anything else. I don't necessarily expect that, and I certainly don't expect what allowed Rhett Lowder to debut last year to happen, or at least I'm hoping it doesn't happen. So I don't know that we'll see Chase Burns this year, but if we do, it would be very, very exciting.
Immediate jersey buy for Jacob?
No, probably not, because he's 81.
Oh.
So he'll change his number next year.
Good point.
But if he comes up and throws like 105, I'll get the 81.
Rhett Lowder was fantastic last September, but he was called up because of the reason he was called up was for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And I would have rather have not have seen Rhett Lowder last year. I would rather not even be talking about Rhett Lowder at all this season, because the only reason we're talking about Rhett Lowder this season is because of the excitement we felt because of what we saw from him in September. But as we mentioned, he got called up for all the wrong reasons. I don't want to see Burns this season, because the only way he's called up this season is for all the wrong reasons. Now, when you talk about the bullpen and other stuff too, would be interesting, especially you talk about the triple digits and all that fun stuff. That would lead to some interesting talking points there. But for the Reds to get to that point, that means something bad is happening in the back end of the bullpen that we're having to at least tinker with ideas to try to fix. Right? Like, I feel like if we see Burns at all throughout the 2025 season, it will be for all the wrong reasons, because I think that assuming everyone's healthy, the depth that this rotation has with Rhett Lowder right on the outside looking in, ready to be called up at any time, and Connor Phillips and some of these other guys, I don't want to see Chase Burns called up prematurely. I want to make sure that the Reds take their time. I see a lot of people that bring up, well, imagine if the Pirates would have taken their time with Skeens. Pirates aren't any good. The Pirates are not a good organization. They're not a good team. They had no choice. And by the way, Skeens, obviously, yes, I think if he's in the Red system, you're finding a spot for him in the rotation. You're not being patient and waiting. I just don't think Chase Burns is Skeens, and if he is, then let's have that conversation later. I'm all for that. That's a good, like Jacob said, a good problem to have. The Reds are in a position now where they can take their time and not force feed these guys through the system. I went back and looked, like Hunter Greene, he had 49 appearances in the minors before he made his Reds debut. No, Nick Lodolo, 30 appearances in the minors, 46. You're not putting Graham Ashcraft in the upper echelon with Hunter Greene and Lodolo and others. But like Andrew Abbott, 41 appearances, Ashcraft, 46 appearances. These guys spent a very good, comfortable amount of time in the minors before being called up to test the major league, waters. So for me, I think if we see him at all, if we see Chase Burns at all in 2025, it'll be for all the wrong reasons. So I don't want to see him. I don't want to talk about him. I don't want to get to the point in the season where it's like, man, they have 3 of their guys in the rotation out. Maybe they should call up Chase Burns. That's not a good thing. That's a problem. I don't want problems in 2025. I want this Reds team. I want to just positive vibes throughout the entire 2025 Reds season if possible. So there you go. But I'm excited to see what his stuff looks like coming up later on today. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's always exciting to watch these guys, whether it's, spring training or the minors or whatever else. The first, few times we're going to be able to watch Chase Burns pitch within this organization is going to be fun to watch, whether it's, for Louisville or all the way down in Chattanooga or Dayton or wherever, he ends up. Watching Chase Burns, I assume, in the games that he starts will be some of the most streamed minor league games across maybe the whole country this year because, he comes in right out of the draft as, one of the Reds' top prospects, one of the top prospects in all of baseball. I believe he's the top 30 prospect in all of baseball. Just really, really an unbelievable player and a really, really highly touted prospect. You say that he's not Paul Skeens, and if he is, that's a great place to be. I don't know how drastically far apart they are as prospects. Yeah. I mean, coming out of LSU, obviously Paul Skeens, one of the best of all time, but Chase Burns, 2 years at Tennessee and then the year at Wake Forest, he was an unbelievable pitcher and someone that everyone was really excited about seeing come into the MLB draft. So I think that there absolutely is a chance. I'm not going to say he's going to, compete for the Cy Young as a rookie, but there absolutely is a chance that he can, scratch and claw his way to being a top 5, top 10 pitcher in the MLB. And if he gets there, at a similar point as Hunter Greene, as Elliot said, what a special place that would be for Reds fans to have that as the 1-2, both those guys reaching their potential in this rotation.
When you and I have two different opinions, I hate anytime you're right. I absolutely hate. I hope you're right. I want you to be right. I want to be 1,000,000,000% wrong on this. I want him to be so damn good that the Reds are having debates and arguments in the front office about what the hell do we do? Do we call him up now? Like, that's a good thing it's a good problem to have either way. Let's talk about another pitcher for the Reds. I know I've been accused already of overreacting to all the positives out of spring training, and now I think I'm falling going in the other direction. I'm falling for all the negative stuff that start. The more sample size of games coming out, we're getting less of the 2 home run, 6 RBI performances from Austin Hayes and the 2 home run performances from Elly De La Cruz in his first spring training game. Now that the rosters have been able to breathe a little bit through multiple stretches of spring training games, we're starting to see some deficiencies. How much stock we put into that, about as much as what you do into the positives, I get that. But Nick Lodolo, who we've been kind of circling, saying he needs to take that next step, based on what we've seen in spring, it doesn't feel like we're trending in that direction where he is taking that next step. Various reports you read, his velocity on his fastballs in the lower 90s, which is well below what it normally is. Obviously, back-to-back home runs he gave up the other day. It just seems like he doesn't trust his stuff right now. I get super excited about Austin Hayes and Elly De La Cruz when all these guys are balling out in spring training, and I'm also starting to panic when I see guys not pitch well. How are you reacting to the struggles of Nick Lodolo? Because it's not just one outing. It's been multiple outings where we're looking at Nick Lodolo saying, I don't expect you to be a finished product, in late February, early March, but, man, it just continues adding to the pile of questions we have regarding Nick Lodolo.
Can he be injured yet? When this happens in July, I usually just say he's injured already, and that's the excuse. So if he's not injured yet, I don't know. Maybe I will start freaking out about spring training.
Here's the thing. I'm not going to freak out over spring training stuff. You guys know this, and in fact, I'll read some of this to you right now. I saw it on Twitter. Shout out to On Base Machine on Twitter. Johnny Cueto's spring training ERAs by year. 2008, he had a 5. 2010, he had a 5.4. 2011, how about a solid 6? 2012, 4.95. 2013, 5.16. 2014, 4.61. Hunter Greene, if this means anything to you, had a 7.2 spring training ERA last year. These spring training stats for pitchers mean nothing. They're irrelevant. And this is why I say that. I think when you look at a pitcher, especially in modern baseball today in 2025, that arm is an art form, right? It's not 1922. We're not chugging beers in the clubhouse and just lobbing as many as we can, getting drunk every day. These guys are taking care of their bodies more than ever. You can't throw 105 every pitch in spring training. You can't throw your best stuff in spring training. They're still elevating. They're still trying to get that arm warmed up, and when you see a batter see a pitch that's probably not major league level right now and on March 5th, right? He's going to take advantage of it. He's going to take you deep because the batter is ready. The batter's going to be ready. I think pitching right now, it's all about building up that stamina. It's about building up that arm strength. It's working on new pitches. You see that a ton. Graham Ashcraft working on new pitches. Hunter Greene last spring training working on new pitches. And it's all about development. It's about growth. It has nothing to do with stats. It has nothing to do with numbers. In terms of Nick Lodolo, am I worried that he's not hitting his numbers. He's not pitching as well as he does. I'm concerned. I was concerned at the end of last season when it was happening, and I was concerned the year before when he went down with injury. I'm very concerned about Nick Lodolo as a pitcher in general, but I'm not concerned about Nick Lodolo based on what he showed me this spring, because spring training means nothing. It means something if you want a positive spin on it. It means nothing if you're gonna be negative about it. And it's unfortunate to say that out loud, the hypocrisy of that statement, but it's the truth. I'm not going to get down on Elly De La Cruz if he strikes out 10 times in a row, which, by the way, he hasn't. He's been awesome this spring. But if he did that, I'm not going to freak out. A guy like Noelvi Marte, who has been increasingly, I guess decreasingly bad as each little aspect of the season has ended, and he's still not hitting well right now. Like, that's, to me, where I get a little bit concerned, because you're playing against, pitchers who aren't all the way there yet. You're playing against spring training talent. And I think you can look at it from both ways, but in terms of, pitching stats and ERA and how many strikeouts you're having this spring, I'm not concerned about it. I want to know that you're healthy and you're ready for the start of the season. That arm is getting loose.